From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hello again. Welcome to Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis here on Can TV. Missed the place, been gone for a couple of weeks, but I want you to know that while I was gone, I was serving the people of Cook County. Not imprisoned or anything, but actually on a jury. And I think we served justice and we served it well. But, you know, it's really funny how that happens when you get that little thing in the mail saying, you know, you have jury duty on Monday, and you just kind of put it in your calendar. It's just another one of those things you're going to do. And you're just kind of sitting there, and then suddenly, bam, you're on a jury, and it lasts for 2 weeks. But it was really interesting, and I'm glad it happened. And also, it was nice to see Alden sitting in this chair last week. He did a very good job. Thank you very much, Alden Laurie. So, unemployment is a big thing in the news, as we all know, and we're very happy to see that there are jobs out there, because our former mayor managed to snag 2 of them in the space of about 2 weeks, and they're pretty good jobs. So you see, stop whining. There are jobs to be found. Here to talk with us today are 2 of my favorite people who are sort of political animals and political analysts. Chris Robling is here. Cindi Canary is here. Chris Robling refers to himself, because he has so many titles, he has to put them all in one basket, as a Republican analyst.
There you go.
Also with the City Club of Chicago, WGN-TV, you know, private practice, just a million things. Cindi Canary is also joining us today. Cindi, the last time she was here, was the director, I guess, of the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform. You stepped down from that position.
Now I'm a free-floating analyst.
And
You're free-floating.
just kind of like, she's just a free
But reformed.
spirit.
You're a reformed
I'm a
man.
reformed analyst.
But still in favor of reform.
Yeah.
And
when
will that
Which the Sun-Times described in an editorial this morning like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah, I was going to say, when will the Reformation begin?
Right. So
Just you wait.
as soon as the reform happens, we're going to get her back, and we'll talk about what that reform was. But actually, I consider this to be something of a kind of well, not an exit interview, but an exit conversation. You can talk with us about where things are going. So here's a good place to start, and I think we're just going to be all over the place. Warning to the viewers, you could get whiplash from what's going to happen here today, because we may just veer from one thing to another. But when Rahm Emanuel took office, he came up with that list of whatever it was, 76 things that he's going to do in the first 100 days. And we're already, you know, 30-some days into this, so he's a third of the way. Is he going to make it? Is he going to get to all of those things that he said he was going to do?
Does anyone ever make it through their list? I think he's making progress. I wouldn't necessarily say he's going to get to the end of his list.
Right. I think it's admirable that he had a list.
It is.
It's admirable
I'll give
that
him
he
that.
wants to make change, and
that he's willing to enumerate those things.
Right, and I think he's done it in a diplomatic way, because we're a city that re-elected Mayor Daley several times, so he doesn't want to get back on Daley, and he's looking forward. But I think he could do with clarity. And maybe a little concision there, and put them into baskets and say, I've got 4 baskets, and there are 13 in this basket and 8 in that, you know, I mean, because your eyes kind of glaze over.
Yeah.
And really, you're right, some priorities. It took us a long time to get in this position. We don't need to resolve everything in 100 days. What we need to do is resolve things strategically.
Well, yeah, this reminds me of the early Carter period. When in 1977, President Carter had a lengthy list, and he was sending major initiatives to Congress every other week. So there was an energy initiative, there was a jobs initiative. He had all of these different programs. When CETA came out of that, and the problem is that public attention needs to focus. So that there is support in the constituency for the resolution that presumably Mayor Emanuel wants to provide to the new city council.
Well, wasn't he one of the people counseling Barack Obama to follow that course of action with the presidency? I mean, let's not do everything all at once.
Absolutely, he was.
So it's kind of interesting when he gets his own shop. But I mean, I think that
it's you know, it feels very different when you changed chairs.
Yeah,
From being the
yeah,
advisor to being the executive.
One would think.
One would think. I
But
would
he's
not
also
know.
he and his people are, if nothing else, they're not. They are absolutely masters of managing public perception. They're very good with public relations, and I thought one of the things that was a masterful stroke for me was, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut $75 million out of the budget, and then 2 days later, okay, I did that. We can check that one off. Yeah. And then you look at the details, and about 40 million of that is just kind of something that when you read it, you don't even have the vaguest idea what it is. It's just sort of the shell game of moving things around. So a lot of it is just having that checklist so that you can check things off and say it is done. Because if it was that easy to take 75 mil out of the budget in one day, I think even Rich Daley's people would have done that.
But I think that, as Cindy just said, we got into this position fiscally over a long span of time because there are forces exerting pressure on the budget at City Hall. And unwinding those forces and taking a new look at the budget and coming up with a new way of approaching it is going to take its own, I would say, assembly of a constituency.
Yeah.
And that's going to require substance. So I think the public relations value comes from having the substantial underpinning. It's not going to come from if these 75 items are seen as inconsequential or trivial, I don't think that's going to add to Rahm Emanuel's persuasive capability or political capital.
I would agree with that. Now, one of the things that really struck me as interesting is how Mayor Emanuel started his Springfield advocacy work 2 months before he was inaugurated.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
And really did things rather deftly down there.
He's good at that stuff, isn't he?
He is a very good and persuasive lobbyist. Whether or not I agree with the outcomes.
And that was, I found that among the many things that I find really fascinating about Rahm Emanuel is that notion that you can just see him walking around, while he's brushing his teeth with a cell phone, calling 3 legislators and saying, I need this, and that one, remember that one from 2 weeks ago? You never called me back. And it's such a contrast to the former mayor, who I think we all agreed was very effective as a mayor, but what a difference in the kind of way that he goes about just living his life and doing things.
Yeah, Rahm Emanuel is the embodiment of the 70s activist congressperson, and now he happens to be a 70s activist congressperson in the office of the mayor. And I think that, that's terrific so far as it goes. But there's a limit, because there really is a budget shortfall. It's enormous, and the city residents need those services. I mean, it's fire, police, garbage, sewer and water. I mean, you've got some very basic elements, and I really wonder how much beyond those 4 he's going to be able to fund, because we've got pensions now coming up to be as big as the delivery of a fundamental service.
That's right.
Well, I believe it was just yesterday that the Sun-Times listed the top 100 paid people.
Salaries.
The salaries. Again, good and bad on this. The good thing is Rahm Emanuel, that's one he checked off. He said he was going to put all the salaries online. They're online. The bad news is you get to see what some of these salaries are. And it was pretty amazing to me to see the levels of pay in the fire and police departments, which I worked for the city for a long time. I really had no idea that some of those salaries were quite as many of them were as high as they are.
So you're going to become a conservative Republican and be skeptical of government.
I've always been skeptical of government, but I'm also skeptical of Republicans and Democrats.
Darn.
Yeah,
Thought we could make a sale there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess our new police commissioner is making $40,000 less than our old police commissioner. And our new
that gets made up by our
superintendent has
school
got incentives in the contract.
Right.
It is important for government to incentivize good people.
It is.
It is not important. It is detrimental for government to incentivize too many people. And I think what everybody in this economy, I mean, from Florida to Washington, everybody has seen private industry rationalize its activities. And that means tough decisions, and that means people getting laid off to reduce headcount, reduce costs, and go seek revenue elsewhere. when you realize that the city's revenue options are pretty limited, you've got to look at the way things are being delivered. And I was at a forum at the Union League Club with the new aldermen. One of them is the firefighter from the 36th Ward. And he has a tremendous view from the firefighting level of how many middle managers there are up there. And that's kind of sclerotic, and it's very expensive. I don't think we can afford
These
it
things are cyclical, because I remember very clearly when Mayor Daley came into office 23 years ago, he made a compelling point that Chicago's major managers were really underpaid in terms of the competitive cities.
And it was really an attempt to professionalize.
And that there was an absolute need to professionalize. And I don't think you can deny that a lot of that really took place. Of course, what happens in these cycles then is that once those folks get on the bus at those higher salaries, everybody who replaces them comes in at a little more, and pretty soon you're at a point. But
and it is, I think, as Chris points out, it's about that middle. You know, all those layers. It's not necessarily about the front lines. You know, we often don't have enough cops out there. But it's the structure, it's the bureaucracy.
Well, there is a
the service delivery. Let's say the tooth to the tail. It's the service delivery element. Are people out there serving the taxpayers, or are they back reading the paper at their desk?
There's an interesting sub-debate which
Nobody
none of
reads
us.
the paper anymore.
No,
They
no,
don't.
They're tweeting their friends.
Yeah, they're tweeting friends. Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Let's see.
Let's see if anybody want to talk about tweeting. I do think it's important to point out that that the discussion when you talk about what's on and off the table, it's always public safety is off the table. That includes fire and police and sanitation. So those the big three departments rarely get that kind of analysis. But there has been for some time a very strong debate about the modern fire department in the modern American city, where construction has changed radically over the last 30 years, and there are many, many fewer fires and many fewer people dying in fires. But fire departments have changed from being firefighting organizations to being hospitals, basically. They're mobile hospitals. So they have lots of other duties. But that means also that management in the middle has to change, and maybe we don't need as many people, maybe we don't, but that debate is a very difficult one to have. Looks like we're going to have that debate over the guys who operate the refuse collection vehicles, the garbage trucks. But if Rahm Emanuel is going to be successful, he's going to have to open those questions up in all the big three departments. How do we take the money we have and deploy that service out on the street?
And they have to be very serious debates, because
they really do.
It really is about this service delivery at the end point. I saw a very small article the other day, and I don't know if anybody else saw it, that said that the aldermanic menu money had not been funded.
Right.
And that, I mean, that is also kind of an interesting thing and an interesting change, and you can, debate the value of menu money, but a lot of that goes into, the roads.
But then,
the neighborhoods.
If I'm not mistaken, I think 2 or 3 days ago in the budget hearing when Alexandra Holt was what's the word? When she was given her job, I think several aldermen said, "You're not going to touch that aldermanic money, are you?" And I believe the answer was, "Oh no, we would never touch that. That's not on the table."
But the serious question then becomes, I think there's a distinction relative to the serious question that you pose. There are the institutional questions. Are we properly ordered in the fire and the police and the service delivery on the sewers and water and things like that, versus the headcount question, because the headcount question becomes a union question.
Right, exactly.
And so I think there's a lot of receptivity to, say, making a leaner wiring diagram, as long as you've got those folks at the bottom of the pyramid. It's when you start saying, and I'm not making this suggestion relative to police necessarily or relative to fire, but when you start saying, we're going to take what we've got 100 people at the bottom of the pyramid, now we're going to have 73, well, now you've got a union issue. And frankly, I just think that Mayor Daley, whatever political strengths he had, he chose continuously not to have that conversation. He would talk endlessly about how he was I don't think he did a particularly good job at that. But now Emanuel is going to have to do a good job at both, because the situation's not going to be resolved with either one or the other.
I want to put something out on the table that frankly almost hurts me to have to say this, but I really wanted to have you in for this discussion, Chris,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I thought Cindy would be an excellent counterpoint to this. My perception is that although your folks, the Republicans, are slimmer in number than they might have wanted to be in the Illinois legislature, their influence is out of proportion to their numbers. I have a sense that in the last, few months.
Would that it were the case.
Well,
wish.
there seems to be a much greater discussion now around cutting the budget instead of raising revenue, and that point of view seems to be infusing the body politic from the top all the way down.
Yeah.
And I obviously I know, Cindy, you might want to comment on this, but do you see it that way? Do you think that the Republican point of view is winning the day in Illinois?
Well, I wish that it were. I think there are different dimensions to what you're referring to as the Republican point of view. I think there is the realization that the arithmetic is incontrovertible. Mm-hmm. Now, we've been saying that for years, and people have said, we'll get to that later. Now we're going to divert more money from pensions. So the arithmetic issue has been obscured. It's been behind a lot of smoke and mirrors and whatnot. Now it's really very much in front of our faces, and we can no longer deny it. So that is important. As for the Republican view, it's Republicans, if they're not going to be Me Too party, if they're going to be a reform party, which I think is their natural role in the state of Illinois, they've got to be about a smaller, smarter, leaner, more effective government, so that the dollar that comes in from the hardworking taxpayer is actually providing some kind of service and not getting eaten up in some middle-level bureaucracy. So I think these two can come together nicely. I haven't really seen that yet, that second part down in Springfield. I think that really a lot of my friends on the Democratic side of the aisle just want to keep spending, but maybe spend a little bit less. They don't really care about the spending problem, the profligacy that they've instituted at state government and county.
Where do you fall on the question of the revenue side of the debate? I got to tell you, I have so little patience for the kind of closed-minded view that we just simply must not raise any more revenue under any circumstances.
But Ken, you've always exhibited patience with me, and
I do exhibit some patience with you.
Amazing.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because I'm not.
And my
getting
answer
this.
is not another dime. Not another. Here's why. We have this much of a society, mm-hmm. and in this much of a society, we've got this much of an economy. Mm-hmm. And you're really talking about a finite number of dollars, okay? Until the society and the economy grow. And so what we are talking about is taking money out of families to give it to a bureaucracy. And you said you were skeptical of government. I cannot countenance another dime to a bureaucracy until we know that bureaucracy is doing everything that it should be doing it absolutely well.
Those are platitudes, Mr.
No, this is real. This is real.
I'm just gonna.
No.
Taxed enough
My
already.
job is to be the impartial moderator here. So you go right ahead.
I will go along with Chris as far as we have an arithmetic problem. I mean, I think what's driving the debate in Springfield is the numbers, and the kick in the can down the road have gotten to the point where it
Agreed.
is scary and it is dangerous.
Absolutely agree.
And we are not meeting some basic human needs.
Mm-hmm.
I will diverge on the revenue end of things, but I really think that it's not necessarily that we saw more of a Republican point of view. We're starting to see a little bit more of a wake-up call, I think.
Right.
Just a freaked out point of view.
A freaked out point of view. And some of the stuff that was thrown out, 5 casinos, I think
that'll fix everything.
It's cloud cuckoo.
Right.
Well, and we are meeting today. We're taping this on the day that there are articles in the paper about the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
Talking about moving.
CME moving its headquarters operation.
Well, then they better change their name. That's
they did. They changed their name to CME.
CME, right.
It's no longer linked to Chicago. It's no longer linked to the Merc.
It's just linked to the alphabet.
And I want to say CME is a global leading institution And just like there's an arithmetic problem that's right before our faces, you get that letter from Caterpillar that says, and their $1 billion is going to Texas for research and development. It's not coming here. CME is talking about leaving. Small startup companies have left and held press conferences at the state line. Ken, we have to grow growing government will not solve anything. Growing the economy will cover 1,000 sins.
And the notion that one is exclusive of the other is folly to me. They are very much interconnected with one another, because to an increasing degree we have to rely on government to do the things that the private sector is either incapable of or unwilling to do.
I think
and those things cost money, and we have to participate in that.
Do you have any, genuinely, as a guy who reads everything,
as two
et cetera,
old friends.
Okay. Do you think that government is doing much of anything
properly? Yes, I absolutely do.
See, I go and I stand in the line at the post office in North Riverside on a Saturday morning,
come on now, Chris.
and I say to myself, this is what Barack wants to give me for health care.
That is,
and that's absolutely true.
That's a red herring.
It is not a red herring. It is not a red herring.
The fact that you have the ability, if you wanted to tweet private photographs to your friends, comes because the government.
How did we get into that?
Just because it's on all of our minds at the moment. The reason that we have the ability to do the kinds of things we do today is not because of the genius of Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or anybody else. It's because the government invested billions of dollars into developing the backbone of the internet and everything else. That's what government does. Government goes in and paves the way so that private sector can come in and make money at it. Okay? It doesn't work the other way around. If we were left entirely in the hands of the private sector, do you think there'd be a public hospital system, a public transportation system, of anything for people who can't make it in that economy? All right?
I don't know why we hate the government so much.
Who hates government? I didn't say I hate government.
No,
I'm skeptical.
I
skepticism
wasn't even
is
talking about you. But I think that we, instead of often as a society talking about legitimate, things that we should be improving in government. We talk about government and government employees as bad things.
Because government is the problem.
To me,
the worst
what we have in
moment that
common.
happened in the last 50 years in this country was when Ronald Reagan said government is the problem, because it was a simplistic thing that everybody could grab onto, and it has turned people against good people wanting to work in government and work in public service. It's had a corrosive effect.
Yeah, I of course disagree.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing.
Vehemently.
This is a
right now,
half-hour.
Silently, because I know you're on a point.
This is a 29-minute
Go,
show,
man.
and we've already blown about 24 of them.
So we've spent them wisely.
I think so.
Okay.
So let's turn our attention, ladies and gentlemen, to the remap in Springfield, because that's, after all, something
I'm not
you guys.
sure
I'm
that
not gonna,
time was
shut
spent
up.
wisely on that map.
Well, somebody spent a lot of time thinking about that map.
I'm going to just sit back and listen to you
and
guys.
Not to mention any names, but his initials are Mike Madigan. Okay, thank you.
MJM, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really a work of I think political genius. And the map, I'm not intimately familiar with the census block by census block level enumeration of this thing, but to my eye, and I once was commissioner of elections during a remap period, I think it's going to withstand any challenge. So we're looking at essentially the map we're going to have. There might be a little tweaking, but this is basically it. And this is what happens when you lose elections. To view it from
there
a
are
Republican
consequences.
Bill Brady lost the unlosable race. Nice guy, good intentions, lousy campaign, terrible proposition to the voters, and we really are, and that's a Republican failing. That's not an individual failing. But by losing that, there was no constraint whatsoever on what Mike Madigan could do down there, and we've got the map to show for it.
And it is, Chris is absolutely right, and I would say there's something very wrong with our map drawing process, and that this really illustrates it. If previous sessions, or cycles weren't enough, where we went, kind of into commissions and ties and pulling names out of hats, what you get when one party controls it, and I don't care which party controls it, is a political map. The courts have said, generally that's not the issue. So long as it's representative of the voters and the diversity, So it is likely, I think we will see some litigation.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that this map will change dramatically, but I do not think that a service was done to the voters.
No, sorry.
30 years from now, or maybe 40, but in time, all maps will be drawn like Iowa's. I mean, this map would have been a better service to the people of the state of Illinois if we had loaded it with the same programming software that they have in Iowa, that they use there, loaded it with all of the census block information. The only question then, which I don't even think is necessarily political, is what do you choose, a centroid or do you choose a corner of the state? After you press that button, it comes out with a map that meets all of the legal criteria. And you look at the districts in Iowa, and they are remarkably sensible. And they have respected.
And contiguous.
They're compact, they're contiguous, and they respect all of the issues of voter participation that Cindy's mentioning. This can all be done, and we can take the sort of self-seeking politics, whether it's Democratic or Republican, out of the equation, and that's where we need to get.
I think it's going to take us a while, as you said, to get there. I don't even think Iowa does it as well as we think Iowa does it right now. But Iowa also doesn't have our demographic diversity, and it also doesn't have our strange shape.
Right.
But I think this is the direction we're moving. I mean, you see it. We've seen a number of states adopt these independent commissions. We'll see how they do.
But we'll be the last one. We will.
We will be the last
one,
and we will go kicking and screaming. And I think one of the real travesties this session is, one of the very first things Governor Quinn signed were the state legislative maps, and even issued a statement about how wonderful the process was. What I don't understand is why the congressional map is still sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And whatever happened to the Pat Quinn reformer? The voice of the and where did all of that go? But this is all of a piece. I think this is all of a piece, with CME saying that it might leave, with the kind of budget nightmare that we have down in Springfield, with the inability to make any real change. I will say on this program what I've said privately. I really think that we are leaping towards economic irrelevance in the 21st century. We being
Illinois,
the state of Illinois, we being the city of Chicago. People have in their mind the city of the century and this great industrial colossus in the middle of the continent.
Unfortunately, it was the 20th century.
And though there's still a lot of manufacturing around,
we got to go.
We got to go. Unfortunately, manufacturing is saying the same thing.
I don't have to be subtle when we're here with two old friends. We're out of time. We got to go. I do just want to make very brief mention, Chris, you and I had the great privilege for many years of working when we were working public radio with Tom Roser, and he passed away. I had great feelings for him, and I wish him and the family the best. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom right here on CAN TV. It's a community service of CAN TV, and you can find us here on cable. You can see this and other programs online at cantv.blip.tv. And you can check us out there or subscribe on iTunes. Want to thank Chris Robling and Cindi Canary for joining us on the program today. You can see us in all of those different ways, and if that's not enough, I'll tweet you a picture. See you next time.